forward this debate today.
Karin Smyth.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And I rise very proudly to speak as both the Vice Chair of the British and Irish Parliamentary Assembly and the All-Party Group on Britain and Ireland. And I thank my friend, the Honourable Member for Rochdale, for securing this debate today. In 2018, I spoke in one of the Brexit debates on the eve of St Patrick's Day. And I said then that although we didn't know really where St Patrick was from, we knew probably that he possibly wasn't Irish, but he did wander and roam much across these islands. I also talked then about the Bristol merchants who under Henry II went to Dublin in 1171 to defend Dublin Castle and were rewarded with establishing trading posts between Bristol and Dublin. The point being that the movement of people trading to deliver economic prosperity is what has fashioned our political relationships across these islands for centuries, and today is no different. But in so many other respects, today is so very different, and thank goodness for that. My own parents were part of the post-war 50s exodus of young people from rural Ireland to London. Their older siblings had to come. They came for the crack because, frankly, it was a lot more fun here than it was in rural Mayo or Cavan. Now, we all know that they faced some challenges, but what fantastic opportunities England gave to them and has given to us. No more so than in one generation, me being here as an English MP, for which the entire family is enormously proud. Now, here in Britain, that post-war community established support networks, and since the 1970s, as we've heard from the Honourable Member for Rochdale, the work of the Irish in Britain as an umbrella organisation has supported individuals and groups throughout the country, and colleagues can check they're on their website, but on average there are at least 1,000 Irish people in each of our constituencies, and the charity supports culture, heritage and health, and myself and the Honourable Member for Lewis, who's in her place, proudly supported our Supporting Green Hearts campaigns a couple of years ago. The post-war exodus was facilitated by the Common Travel Area, loosely defined, securing centuries-old exports of Ireland's youth to powering of Britain's economy between the then separated countries in 1922. Now, COVID has highlighted for most of us many, many difficulties, but for me, effectively losing the Common Travel Area was particularly difficult. Trying to visit my older family members, some in care homes across the border in Cavan and Northern Ireland, with different rules, adding needless bureaucracy, needless cost and stress to thousands of families. We were an afterthought for the government in Dublin, and it took them a long time to listen to the pressure from us here and through the embassy here in London as they tried to balance their responsibilities to their greatest and oldest neighbour and their responsibilities within the European Union. And this will continue to be difficult. We understand that. And as we heard last week, I'm afraid, from the government, ministers mistakenly suggesting that Ireland and the Common Travel Area is an unchecked backroom to Britain. It is not. But we, to both governments, I think, from this place today, say to them that as a diaspora, we will continue to roam freely across these islands, and both governments need to learn from our experience and the social, political and economic benefits of the Common Travel Area. Now, Ireland has changed beyond recognition with member of the European Union. I want to highlight briefly today one area of particular importance, which is joyful for me, and that is women's rights. Women were at the heart of Irish politics and culture throughout the battles of centuries, and for Home Rule and for independence. But the consolidation of the Irish state, with domination of the church, very quickly women were relegated to the private sphere. Now, indeed, although much divides unionists and nationalists, as the dust started to settle, there was one settled agreement, and that really is that keeping women in the home was something that they all could agree on. And that's where I learnt my formative politics, Madam Deputy Speaker, watching and listening to Irish women, learning that what was said in public wasn't the same as what was said in private. My nan sat by her peat fire in Mayo, and I can still smell it, and the women would call round. She sat there talking, and my mum carried on this tradition in London, the women coming round for a chat and the talk. After a long night of talk on every conceivable subject, my mum passed on to me the saying she shared at home, which was, "Up the chimney with that now." Up the chimneys and around the tables of thousands of Irish women's homes, women talked differently in the public sphere that they were effectively barred from. It ill behoves any politician who doesn't know what goes up the chimney. Now, once in the European Union, Ireland, like the UK, had to accept the social change along with economic support, equal pay, maternity rights, non-discrimination on marital status, and finally those votes on divorce and abortion. But as I learnt from the private conversations around the chimney, I also learnt from women here in the British Labour Party that individuals in private don't change the world. Women have to occupy the public space. Women have to have political power to secure our rights to equality with men and to change the laws that dictate the private sphere. And all our legislators across these islands have a long way to go. The solidarity north-south, east-west between women of these islands has been a privilege to be part of, and we still have much work to do. Now today I have my slightly wilting shamrock and my British-Irish parliamentary brooch. As a child we were sent to school with the shamrock, but through the 80s I didn't often wear it on St Patrick's Day, in part moving away from my childhood, seeking identity of my own, but part being Irish here in the 1970s and 80s was hard. We were expected to have a view, a side in the constant struggles, and we didn't often have a side. I knew there were many sides, and I knew I had a stake in them all. But the 1980s changed the narratives of having sides. The decade allowed us to have many sides, and we wanted the same thing, to live in peace and prosperity. The 1998 agreement, on the Good Friday Agreement, was not just about Northern Ireland, Ireland or a border. It was about freedom of movement of people across these islands, our deep roots, about mutual interest and respect, about shared security and prosperity, and our duty now is to build upon it in full. Now, finally, Madam Deputy Speaker, one of my predecessors as a Bristol MP is Edmund Burke. Now, I think he's Bristol's last Irish MP, whose statue still stands proudly in the centre of our city, a city he apparently only visited twice. He lasted 6 years, a milestone that I myself have only recently passed. And during that time, he had a somewhat acrimonious time with the Bristol merchant venturers, whose patronage was needed in those days for office. Now, Burke, as the father of modern conservatism, recognised that restrictions on people, as with the anti-Catholic legislation of the time, and the restrictions on trade from Ireland, meant an ever-impoverished Ireland. And that, he felt, for England was economically unwise. His riposte to the anti-Irish protectionism of the Bristol merchants should be heeded by us all today. England and Ireland may flourish together. The world is large enough for us both. Let it be our care not to make ourselves too little for it.
Claire Hunt.
Thank you very much. Madam Deputy Speaker, very grateful for this opportunity to take part